Hi, Gareth here from Previs Education with tips and advice for schools and school leaders. Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, known as ADHD or ADD, is one of the most commonly diagnosed neurodevelopmental disorders in children. It's estimated to affect between 2 and 5% of children in schools and is diagnosed more in boys than in girls, a ratio of approximately 6 to 1. However, this is often because girls tend to suffer more with ADHD inattentive and hide the symptoms better. There are three categories of ADHD. Predominantly inattentive describes students who mainly have problems with concentration and attention span, but who are not usually impulsive or overactive. Predominantly hyperactive impulsive describes students who are predominantly have problems with overactive and impulsive development. Combination is where symptoms from ADHD hyperactive impulsive and ADHD inattentive combine, and this is the most severe form of the condition. ADHD is not an illness, so like autism cannot be cured, but there are ways to mitigate the more severe traits, such as exercise, occupational therapy, or, in more severe cases, medication. ADHD is not a learning difficulty, but it can have an impact on a child's education. That said, ADHD is often comorbid with other conditions such as autism, learning differences, anxiety and depression. ADHD sufferers are often fully aware of their condition, which can cause anxiety and depression and may lead to conduct and defiance issues, which needs to be addressed separately. Importantly, ADHD is not caused by laziness or a lack of discipline. It is simply that ADHD sufferers need to learn how to use the extraordinary skills and ways of thinking that makes them unique. As ADHD itself is not a learning disorder, it is in no way related to IQ or the ability to excel academically. How do we therefore create a school environment where ADHD children can learn and develop to the best of their ability? First, as with all syndromes, get to know your child. How do they exhibit? What are their triggers? And what calms them down? Secondly, like all neurological issues, routine is important, especially if you are still doing online and hybrid learning. Work with the parents to ensure a daily routine is followed and share lesson plans and predicted outcomes with the parents. Whether in class or online, use the Pomodoro technique to chunk time. 25 minutes work followed by a 5-minute break. This allows students to recenter and get back on track. Use a traffic light system to monitor the students' levels. I use green for all's good, yellow for I'm beginning to struggle, and red for I'm about to explode or I am completely disengaged and not understanding. See my video on autism for more details on the traffic lights. Ideally, we don't let a child get to red, intervening beforehand based on the child's needs. 5 minutes physical exercise, either running around a playground or better, if available, 5 minutes on a trampoline to get rid of that energy, or 5 minutes to regain their concentration somewhere peaceful. This is reliant on you and your student knowing the physical clues exhibited before red is reached. This is easier with older students who are more self-aware, but you need to monitor the younger ones who may not be. I've also worked out non-verbal clues to bring my students back on track if they've stopped concentrating or to check their well-being, like placing a hand on their shoulder or a small tap on the desk to refocus them. They also have non-verbal clues to tell me that they need to get out just in case. This stops them becoming embarrassed by being the center of focus or labeled as being different. Seating away from any distractions is vital. My ideal position is center of the room, away from doors and windows, second row back. I also insist on a clean desk policy for all of my students, but especially ADHD ones who will fidget whatever's there. In more severe cases, I replace the chair with either a specialist ADHD chair or, if budgets don't allow, an exercise ball or a beanbag helps. This allows students to move more freely without disengaging and expending energy whilst doing so. Recognition of time can also be an issue with both ADHD and ASD sufferers, so visual reminders of time is very useful. I use kitchen timers for students to measure the time before their next Pomodoro break or the length of time of a task. Timers are also useful for increasing concentration time of a child. Start with what they can do, then increase time by a few minutes every couple of weeks to extend the ability to sit and concentrate. Another problem ADHD students face is organising themselves. Use colour coding to help them organise subjects and work. For example, different coloured folders for different subjects, different coloured tabs for work to be done and work completed, and diaries or digital calendars to list homework and reminders and so on. Finally, actively engage and include ADHD students as much as possible. They are unlikely to volunteer themselves, so you need to be proactive in communicating with them. This will keep them engaged. ADHD is not all negative though, and people with the condition often focus on the positives. As people with ADHD can view the world differently, they are incredibly ingenious and creative, which means they can problem solve the most imaginative ways. A paradoxical byproduct of a lack of concentration in ADHD is their perseverance and resilience no matter what. Children will keep working on a problem and their studies until they've got it right. A misconception is that people with ADHD are easily distracted. Rather, they simply notice a lot and have a heightened sense of observation. This can lead to hyperfocus. This means that many top scientists, writers, artists are people with ADHD. Finally, ADHD children have high levels of compassion and empathy. Often they understand the difference between right and wrong better than neurotypical children and have a strong moral compass. ADHD is not something to be trained out of. It is something to be embraced if we learn to use the skills inherent in the condition while giving students the ability to deal with the negative aspect of it. A child can achieve greatness. Thanks very much for listening, and I will speak to you again soon. Bye.